It's a lot more complicated than you think, isn't it, all of this? So, when the lightkeepers were turning their light on, they started with something called a dog clutch. The only reason it's called a dog clutch is because there's teeth at one side that have to meet like this before it'll run. So, I lift the clutch and you can see all the teeth are going to meet. There we are. The next thing I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of a push, so the top bit is about to start moving. Here we go. Now, I'm not sure they had to do this so much back then, but it is about 120 years old, so it needs a bit of a hand these days. So,
who had the imagination to design something?
The Stevenson. So actually, Robert Stevenson built the tower, and his two grandsons, David and Charles Stevenson, designed your light.
Is the bell rock?
He's also the designer of the bell rock.
It's always on the telly.
Yes, that's the very, very famous one. And that was because of how they had to build it. Because they couldn't use concrete because it would be washed out in the tide, it being a rock. So they had to interlock all the blocks into the actual rock. They had to cut out bits of the rock and fit it all in.
How cool is this?
I know, they're amazing. So I'll start explaining a bit more about it. So you've got your chains that run up and down through the lighthouse. Everyone will have seen them on our way up. So you can now see those chains come right up into the clockwork here. So you see them just in here, and that's pulling all the clockwork round. So when I released the clutch, I actually released a heavy weight. And that weight is now dropping and pulling the clockwork round. So it works like an old grandfather clock with its pendulum. Yeah, that's how it works. So there is a little bit of a flaw to this wonderful engineering, and that is when the weight hits the bottom, this all stops. And you would be left with what we call a standing light. Worst offence a lightkeeper could commit, he'd lose his job straight away for it. It was worse than letting your paraffin go out altogether. So the reason it was worse was because everyone could see your light, but they didn't know who you were or where you were because it's not doing its pattern. Yeah, so they can't be doing that. So that meant before it stopped at the bottom, they had to wind it back to the top, and that is every half an hour. Every half an hour. So every 20 minutes, you're pumping paraffin, and every half an hour, you'd be winding that weight back to the top.
They didn't even have Apple Watches to say.
No, they didn't. So actually, this noisy tab that you can hear on here, you can hear it clinking, that was a very, very good regulator. So if it started going a different, it started going too fast or too slow, they heat it.
They're trained to hear it.
Yeah, so, and because of this, you know, there's loads of discrepancy in it. They also can't go awake. So there was a nice tell, so they didn't just have to guess when it got to the bottom. They had a bell at the bottom. So the weight hit the bell, and then they were told it was to wind it back to the top. And that's what I'm going to do next, to show you how it's wound back. So when they wind it back up, they use a big crank that just looks like this, and I'll show you around this corner as well. Show you for your camera. And then we'll pop it on the end here. And you start to wind it. The top part won't move speed, it won't change speed. And then it hits the second bell, and that tells you it's back at the top. So,
Lighthouse girl.
amazing. So when they pull it off again, when they just pull this clutch off again, it stops the machinery straight away. The top part is still moving, and it's part of the reason it doesn't change. It's moving on its own momentum. It weighs about 4.5 tons. This whole lens here is about 4.5 tons.
So 9,000
So
pounds.
when I'm winding it back to the top, it carries on a buffer just until it's back at the top and back in sync again. And that's how it didn't stop when you're winding it back the way. Amazing.
Your lighthouse.
They're really, really good. Is there any questions or anything that anyone would like to ask me?
I'm just amazed.
They are
Yeah,
amazing.